Okay. Good afternoon, Avian Science. Sorry I didn't have a more interesting Zoom starter for you guys this morning. So you probably saw on Blackboard or in your email that I was pretty sick over the weekend and I didn't get assignments up. So I decided to cancel the assignments for this week. So there's nothing new due. I hope nobody's mad about that. The project is coming up really quickly. It is due April 16th before midnight. And presentations are going to start on the 18th. Hang on a second. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get started today is we are a little bit behind on our lecture schedule, which is normal. I always overestimate the time for lectures because I know I'm going to be running behind. So I am definitely going to talk nutrition. I am definitely going to talk about diseases, and I am definitely going to talk about wildlife rehabilitation. Those are the ones that I think are more interesting, more important, regardless of what you're doing. If you're dealing with birds at any time in the future, these are the topics that you really need to know about. Now, there are roughly 6 topics that we have not yet covered. So I've listed those here. That includes chicken keeping, bird banding, which is used for scientific research on wild birds, falconry, bird watching and attracting birds to your yard, how to make your house and yard a good place for the birds. If you have a yard, you can still feed them on a deck. Falconry, which is using hawks and owls and eagles for, well, officially for hunting. What kinds of things humans are doing that are causing bird declines and how you can avoid doing those, how we can improve the way we do things as a society to help reduce bird declines. And the last one, which kind of goes with human-caused problems, is the feral bird problem. There are populations of birds that have become established in communities throughout the world where they're not native, where they're not, and when they get established in new areas, they can often cause problems for the native birds. So that kind of goes with the human causes of bird declines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to I've created a poll, and I'm going to open this poll. And if you guys can pick the 2 topics based on these numbers that you are most interested in and vote for those, then I will make sure to cover those topics and then, add more in if we have time. So I'm going to launch this poll. So hopefully you guys can see that and start answering. If you don't see the poll, let me know. Oh, somebody's answering already. Jessica can't see it. Well, You can put your vote, Jessica, you can put your vote in the chat because I've got 7 people who've already voted, and that's out of the 9 of you who are here. Okay, thanks, Jessica. That looks like that's probably close to everything. Okay, looks like Betsy had to add her vote in the chat as well. Okay, got it. That'll be everybody. So we have falconry. Not surprised about that one. And bird watching and attracting. Okay, good. Those are the top 2. And then bird banding and human issues come in at tied for place number 3. So I'll try and get all of those in before the semester's over. Thanks, everybody. Okay. So when we were talking last time we met, last week, we were going through how to hand raise baby birds. Now, we were talking about feeding and frequency of feeding and what to feed. Remember, you do need to make sure that you are paying attention to the species of bird and the specifics of what they eat. So this picture, I love this picture. This was taken at a place called Tambopata. I love Tambopata. It is in the middle of nowhere. I have been there. It takes quite a while to get there, quite a while to get back from there. And they are, it's a scientific research station. So most of the people staying there are staying there to study the jungle. And one of the ways they fund their research is that they have a small number of guest rooms. So they do have tourists who get to go there. In addition to the research, though, they're helping to raise macaws for re-release. And so this is one of the macaws here. You can see he's a little fledgling. He's got pin feathers, but he's got most of a tail. Probably not able to fly yet, or not fly very well, that's for sure. The advantage they have at Tambopata is there is nobody there. This is in the middle of the Amazon. There aren't any communities around, so they don't have to worry as much about the birds being comfortable with people because everybody there is a researcher or an ecotourist. Nobody's going to hurt the birds. So they don't really have to worry about that as much. So we're talking now about endangered species and how and when to breed endangered species for release. So what Tambopata does, I think I've mentioned them before because I just love this place. The macaws there, well, all of the big macaws will lay 2 eggs. every breeding season, but it takes 2 adult macaws to raise 1 chick. So generally what they'll do is the first egg that hatches, they'll raise that baby. And the second egg, when it hatches, they'll either not feed the second baby or actively remove it from the nest. So what they do at Tampa Pata is they have nest boxes and that they can climb up and get to. And they, when the macaws lay eggs, they go and collect one of the eggs. So the adults have 1 egg, and assuming it hatches, they'll raise that one, and then the researchers will raise the other one. So that works out pretty easily. The birds are wild, they breed in the wild, they take care of everything, but not every place that is breeding endangered birds can do this, right? If you're talking about you're at a zoo and they have an endangered bird breeding program, you're in charge of who breeds with who. So we have to think about the genetics. Genetic diversity is good for the species. So the more genetic diversity a species can have, the better. The reason for that is genetic diversity reduces the risk that an individual will get 2 copies of what we'll call a disease allele. So remember, alleles are versions of a disease. And a lot of disease alleles, if you have 1 healthy allele, that's all you need to survive. So if you get 1 copy of a disease allele and 1 copy of the healthy allele, a lot of these diseases you can survive. You'll be fine. You'll live, you'll reproduce, everything's good. But if you get 2 copies of the disease allele, then you're not likely to survive, or you'll be sickly, you won't be able to reproduce. So more genetic diversity, less likelihood that you're going to get 2 copies of that disease allele. The other thing that you get is, with more genetic diversity, is as a population, as a whole species, more likely to be able to evolve to deal with changing conditions. So lots of genetic diversity might mean that there are some individuals who can eat a new food source. And it may not matter unless one of the pre-existing food sources is no longer available, or conditions get harsh and you really need that new food supply to get enough calories to survive the harsher conditions. So that's evolution. But population, there's the one other thing is population is more likely to be resistant to diseases. So we've seen a pandemic going on over the past 3 years now with COVID. And some people who get COVID get very, very sick and don't make it, don't survive. And some people who get COVID don't have symptoms. And some people get sick and get long COVID, and some people get sick but get better. So we've got a whole bunch of different alternative pathways for people who get COVID. And part of the reason that you go on these different pathways, part of it is going to be genetic. So you may have a mutation that makes you resistant to the virus. Same thing happens in other animals. So if a bird right now is resistant to this year's avian flu pandemic. Actually, it's been going on for more than a year now. The current avian flu pandemic. If a bird is resistant, they're more likely to survive and reproduce. And what happens if you've got a genetically diverse population, you have more survivors, and the offspring of those survivors are more likely to survive because they're more likely to have that genetic mutation. They're more likely to have inherited that change in their genes. Okay, so this is why we like genetic diversity. So if you're breeding endangered species in captivity, you want to make sure you maximize the genetic diversity by picking individuals who are least related to each other, and individuals who maybe haven't had a lot of offspring yet. So individuals who are very successful breeders in captivity are well represented in the next generation, genetically speaking. Individuals that are less successful or haven't had the opportunity are less represented. So you want to try and help those individuals become more successful in producing the next generation. So that's an important thing to consider. And then, are we releasing the birds? If we're keeping them in captivity as a genetic bank, so to speak, so just maintaining the genetic diversity, maintaining individuals in captivity in case you get to a point where you need to supplement the wild population, that's one thing. But if you're raising them and you're intending to release them, then we have to think about a couple of things. Baby birds learn from their parents. What do they learn? What do you think baby birds have to learn from their parents?
Where to find food?
Where to find food. Good, Anna. And what is the food? What should they be eating? Anybody else? Kinley, what kind of food to eat? Yep, you said that. You typed that about the time I was saying that. How to fly? To some degree, yes. Flying is kind of instinctual in birds, but migration is important, right? Birds often, a lot of species have to follow their parents to find out where they should be spending the winter. Ronit, what predators to watch out for? Exactly. What is dangerous and how do we avoid that danger? What do we do if we see a feral cat? The one thing I have on my list that is, how to successfully hunt. Absolutely. If we're talking about a predatory bird, whether it's hunting mice or hunting insects, how to successfully do that. Good one, Laura. The one thing on my little list that nobody has mentioned is how to raise their own offspring. So most species of songbirds don't learn how, they don't stick around their parents' habitat. They don't stay around and help with the next generation. But crows, ravens, parrots, a lot of these longer lived, slower maturing birds do stick around and they help raise their younger siblings. And they learn from that how to raise their own children. So that's another thing that they have to learn. So what happens to birds who were hand reared and released, but didn't learn these sorts of things from their parents? What do you think is likely to happen to those? won't be as successful, don't survive. Yes, yes, absolutely. That's exactly what happens. Significantly higher mortality rate and lower likelihood not to be able to raise their own offspring. Now, the rate of success or failure is going to vary dramatically depending on the type of bird. Once again, birds that have long lifespans, that are highly intelligent or highly specialized on what they eat, those individuals are going to have less success. Hummingbirds, hummingbirds are very instinctive. They're very, they do very well being hand reared and released. Their survival is probably similar to a released hand reared baby hummingbird. Lots of songbirds, if you do it right, do pretty well. But again, the more complex lifestyle that a bird has, the less likely it's going to be successful. And this goes back to Tambopata releasing macaws. Very socially complex, takes them years to reach maturity. The advantage to this facility is that even after the babies have been released, they can come back for food. They can come back and get a meal. And the previous generations who were hand reared and released from Tambopata are nearby, and they will help the youngsters learn how to be wild macaws. Wild macaws, if you took a wild macaw and it was, let's say, independent at flight, but still learning stuff from the parents, macaws have such a complex social structure that other macaws in the complex, in the community, will help that bird get the rest of the way to being fully independent. And that's what goes on at Tambopata. Okay. So when we talk about raising birds for release, we worry about something called imprinting. Now, there's a specific definition for imprinting. I'm not using so much the specific definition as much as the concept. So what I mean here is getting used to people, learning to associate people with food, not recognizing their own species. So those are the three big things I'm talking about when I'm using this term. So how do we help with that? Well, we do things like this. This is a hand puppet. This hand puppet is used to, it's a California condor, and the puppet is used to feed the chick. It will, yes, it's not real, it's a puppet. It will feed and groom the chick. Obviously, it's not really grooming, but it'll, nibble on the little pin feathers there to try and make the baby feel like that's its parent and get used to that sort of, okay, yeah, it kind of looks scary, but it looks more like a condor adult than you sticking your hand in there. And it seems to work because the condors that have been released from the captive breeding program are doing pretty good. They're breeding in the wild, they're raising their own babies in the wild. So we're helping to reestablish those populations. Now, when we think about this, most baby birds that are going to be raised by people are rehab babies. So these are birds that are brought into wildlife rehabilitators. The unofficial slogan of wildlife rehabilitators who deal with birds is put the bird back. So birds that are found on the ground may or may not be in trouble. They may or may not need to go into wildlife rehabilitation. The biggest mistake is this guy. So this is a fledgling robin. Notice the stubby tail, the gate flanges here at the corners of the mouth. It's standing upright. It's got all of the feathers have grown in on the wing. These last ones might be a little short still, but they're there. Fledglings are often mistaken for injured adult birds. People see a bird on the ground and it's not flying, or it's not flying very well, and they pick it up and some of them try and feed it themselves. Some of them try and take it to a rehabilitation center. When I was working in wildlife rehab during fledgling season, I was saying put the bird back an awful lot. And we just talked about that in a couple of slides back. Fledglings need to learn things from their parents, and they will be more successful if they learn things from their parents than if they get taken into rehabilitation. When fledglings leave the nest, they're not completely ready to fly. They've got to learn what they're doing through practice, and they have to build up those flight muscles. Flying takes a lot of musculature, it takes a lot of energy, and it'll take them a couple of days. For most of them, literally in a couple of days, they'll be able to get up into trees. Maybe not fly long distances, but at least get away from predators. Fledglings are more likely to be caught by predators at this stage, at this fledgling stage. So a lot of these also get caught by cat. If a baby, we're going to talk about rehab later in the semester, but if a baby is caught by a cat, it does need to go into rehab. Okay. If you find a baby bird on the ground, you have to make the decision of what to do. So sometimes birds do need trouble. This guy, he's not really ready to be out of the nest. So you can see he's not standing up. Most of his feathers are pin feathers. Those are two signs that he would still be considered a nestling. Does he need to go back? Maybe. He needs to go back unless you can get him back in a nest-like structure. What am I meaning when I say nest-like structure? So if you can get him back in his nest, that's the best thing. But frankly, most of the time, the nests, if we can spot them, way up in a tree. There's no way we can reach that with our ladders unless we have a fire truck come by, and the fire department's usually not going to come out and help you put a bird back. But if it's at this stage where it's starting to get a lot of feathers, you can put it in something else as a substitute nest. We'll talk about exactly how to do that when we do wildlife rehabilitation, but the parents, when babies are very young, find the babies by going to the nest. When it's close to fledging time, and this guy's probably only a few days from fledging, When it's close to fledging time, the babies can call and their parents will find them based on their call. So this guy may or may not need rehab. This guy definitely does. Notice he's almost completely fuzzy and unable to stand up. And hit this one. This is definitely a hawk of some kind. I'm not sure which one actually, but he's definitely going to need human assistance unless you can get him back in the nest. It can be very hard to raise baby birds successfully. And rehab babies are less likely to be successful in the first year of their life compared to other species. So how do we know? I love this comic from Bird and Moon. If you find a baby songbird, is it visibly injured or cat caught? Okay, needs to go into rehab. What does it look like? Eyes not open, or eyes open and feathers that are still in the pin feather stage. Hatchlings and nestlings, can you see the nest? Return it to the nest if you can. No, then make a substitute nest. And like I said, we'll talk about that when we do the topic of wildlife rehabilitation. Feathered, awkward hops or flutters. Fledgling, is it in immediate danger? Yes. Move it somewhere safer? No. Leave it alone. Alternately, if you have many sharp teeth, large claw on the second toe, you have a dromaeosaur. Has it seen you? No. Back away slowly. Yes. Run. Watch for others. I love that one. Goes right back to the fact that modern day birds are modern day dinosaurs. Okay. So that is raising baby birds. Any questions on raising baby birds before we move on? Is that your scratching post? No, it's not. No, it's not. No. No. Okay, it looks like no questions. So we're going to go on. And talk about nutrition. So the most important thing for you to remember about nutrition, it is that it is very complicated and well studied in only a few species and not completely understood in any species, and that includes us. Nutrition science in humans is a hot mess. So anything you hear about nutrition, always be a little bit cautious about that. The basics are there, but the details are not. So if it's not well understood in humans, you think it's well understood in every type of bird that's kept in captivity? No. So when we talk about different species, we can kind of divide them up into 5 major dietary classifications. So this is for pet birds. And these are all going to have slightly different diets. And remember, we talked about pelleted diets, or maybe we haven't yet. Okay, anyway, when we talk about diets, there's a couple of different kinds of diets, and one is a pelleted diet. Not every species is going to have a pelleted diet that's designed specifically for them. So we're going to talk about how to use a pelleted diet, but we have to make little tweaks to it to personalize it for your species. So the categories are florivore, grainivore, frugivore, omnivore, and nectarivore. VORE kind of refers to this is what they eat. Flora means plant products, seeds, fruits, nuts, bark, roots, berries. So lots of different plant products. And we see this in a lot of the big parrots. So this is a pretty common sort of diet for a lot of the big parrots. Grainivores eat grains and seeds. So smaller parrots like the budgies and the cockatiels and some of the less common smaller parrots are more likely to eat this kind of diet, as is the hyacinth macaw. Okay, I'm going to have to shut him up. Hang on a sec. No, Laura, it was my dang cat, not your computer.
I was like shaking my little computer, like, are you gonna shut up? Like, what's wrong with this?
Yeah. He's discovered that when I'm on a Zoom meeting, if he makes a fuss, that he'll get an extra meal.
Oh, okay.
So that's the problem. He wanted some more food. All right. Let's see. I remember saying hyacinth macaw. Okay. Frugivore, frugivore, fructivore is another word for this. These are individuals who mostly eat fruit and flowers. Yep, flowers. But also eat some nuts, some seeds. So this is a couple of different macaws than our florivore macaws. So they're going to need a slightly different diet, right? Omnivores, this is also very, very common. And if you kind of set up an omnivore diet, that can be a good basic start to a diet for most species of birds in captivity. And so this would be the sulfur-crested cockatoo, the red-tailed Amazon, lots and lots and lots of the Amazon parrots. And these would be, they'll eat anything, seed, fruits, insects, invertebrates. Sometimes they would take small lizards. Not the carnivores, so not things like hawks, which have a different diet. Nectarivores, these are primarily nectar eaters, but they'll also eat pollen from flowers, and they'll supplement with insects, seeds, maybe some fruits. And these are the lorikeets. These are, this is a very specialized diet in the nectar eaters, and it takes some special work to get this diet working very well. Okay. So this is going to be kind of your nutrition basics. And I think you guys have to take a nutrition specific class, if I remember correctly. So the basics that apply to dogs and cats and people also apply to birds. So in our discussion here, we divide up things that we get from food into macronutrients and micronutrients. So macronutrients, we need large quantities or large amounts. And these are carbohydrates, lipids, sometimes called fats, and proteins. So every animal needs, I'm trying to think. I don't know about nutrition in invertebrates. So I'm just going to say all vertebrate or animals, all animals with an internal bony or cartilaginous skeleton need a combination of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins just to survive. This is your very basic macronutrient diet. Figuring out the proportions that you need, that is a different thing. Do you need more carbs than proteins? Do you need more fats in your diet? None of these categories are inherently bad. You cannot survive on a completely carbohydrate-free diet. You have to have some carbohydrates. Yes, Ronit, proportion and source are very important here. But we have to have some from each of these categories. The micronutrients, these are what are needed in small amounts. So these are going to include basically your vitamins and your minerals. So things like calcium and iron, as well as vitamins like the B vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin C, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different vitamins. Do birds make their own vitamin C? I suspect that most of them do. There may be a few, some of the species that eat a lot of fruit might not, because fruit is a very good source of vitamin C. But I suspect that for most birds, they do make their own vitamin C. Just like with mammals, most mammals make their own vitamin C. We're weirdos over here not being able to make our own. Us and guinea pigs, right? So different species need different proportions of both macronutrients and micronutrients. There is absolutely nothing wrong with guinea pigs. I love guinea pigs, but I don't think they make their own vitamin C.
No, they do not.
They don't make their own vitamin C, and we got crazy lucky that scientists, well, European scientists, coincidentally chose them as the lab animal when they were doing the most recent scurvy research.
Yeah, yeah. Any other species, yeah, wouldn't have happened. But that's why rabbits can eat guinea pig food, but guinea pigs can't eat rabbit food. So low levels of vitamins and minerals can cause a lot of problems. And I'm not talking low enough to cause things like scurvy, but just low enough that they're not getting enough of the materials they need. The big one here is egg binding. Low calcium level in female birds can lead to egg binding. Can also lead to weak bones in female birds. Low iron or zinc can lead to anemia. lots of these different vitamins and minerals can lead to neurological problems and increased cancer risks. And that's true for us as well. Low levels of vitamins and minerals can lead to all kinds of problems. Okay, maybe not egg binding, but these other things. But guess what? High levels of vitamins and minerals can also be harmful. You can get nausea, diarrhea, long-term over too much vitamins and minerals can cause feather loss, nerve damage, iron or calcium deposits in joints, which is going to be painful and make animals less able to move around. And our good friend, increased cancer risk. So you have to walk a fine line between, is this both human and bird? Yes, humans can get too much of vitamins and minerals. We know the iron and calcium problems because we see that in people. We know the nerve damage because we can talk to people and figure that out. Nausea and diarrhea tend to be short-term overdoses of vitamins and minerals. So taking a massive dose of vitamins and minerals will often cause that. Feather loss, that's only going to be in birds. Any other questions about this part? We're walking this fine line between getting enough and getting too much. The good news is American diets, even very poor quality American diets, tend to fit into this magic space here. You only see low problems with not enough vitamins and minerals in people who have highly restricted diets. So vegetarians and vegans who aren't really paying attention to making sure that they get enough iron and zinc, for example, and calcium. You got to make sure you're eating the right foods to get those vitamins or those minerals in. Or people who are trying to go on carbohydrate-free diets or, you know, super protein high diets. Laura, that's a good question. I'm going to come back to that because that's a really good question. What we see in, yep, Ronit's got the point right there. What we tend to see most in people is overdoses of vitamins and minerals. Have there ever been recalls? Well, as Ronit pointed out, vitamins and mineral supplements and herbal supplements are not FDA approved. They're not regulated by the federal government in the United States in any way, shape, or form. They don't even have to be accurate about what's in them on the labels, as long as, I think they do have to mention it if they have certain allergens, so certain things that are likely to cause allergies. But if you buy a bottle that says this is vitamin C, there is no law in this country that says that has to have vitamin C. Even if it says vitamin C on the label, it doesn't have to be in those pills.
So that's the scariest thing, because people like who have different type of cancers may not be able to make up a certain like vitamin. Like I think for the thyroid cancer, you don't make up certain vitamins, so you have to take certain vitamin tablets. So if they're not like, that's just very, wow.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it's something that people don't realize. And if we didn't have a lot of other major problems, it's something we should all be upset about. All right, but that is a side topic. It's one of my favorite ones to rant about, but it's a side topic. So going back to birds. All of these problems we have with human nutrition, likely to have them with bird nutrition too, right? So it is estimated that between 80 and 90% of bird diseases, pet bird diseases, are related to poor nutrition. Wow, that's huge. A lot of the data I got on this topic and on the disease topic, I got from a friend of mine who is an avian vet. But if you go out and you look at websites for avian vets, a lot of them will tell you the exact same things. Poor nutrition is the biggest problem. Why is it the biggest problem? Because most people don't know what they're doing when they get a pet bird. And they get a bag of bird seed. Seed diets tend to have high calorie, low nutrient seeds. So they tend to be the seeds that birds will prefer to eat, but not necessarily what they should be eating. This would be kind of like if you set out a buffet in front of your toddler. Well, let's make him a little older. Let's say a 5-year-old. You got a 5-year-old kid, you set out cookies, ice cream, cake, broccoli, salad, and you tell your kid, this is dinner, help yourself. Is your kid going to eat the salad and the broccoli?
No.
No. They're
Well, I
going
mean,
to
if
eat,
I were that kid, no.
huh?
Some people might, but I mean, most people won't.
Usually not for 5-year-olds. They're going to go for the ice cream and the cake and the cookies. Same thing with the birds. They're going to pick out the junk food seeds. This is especially true for wild bird seeds. Wild bird seeds, if you're feeding the wild birds, it doesn't matter if they are high calorie, low nutrient seeds, because wild birds are not living strictly on that diet. They come to the feeder, they get a lot of calories in, but they also go out and they eat other foods. They're going to eat a lot of diversity. Sometimes you will see seeds that are listed as fortified. Yeah, that's not a good one either. Same problems.
Fortified, what does that mean? Like,
It means they've added vitamins and minerals. The problem is the way they fortify, sometimes the vitamins and minerals are only on the outside of the seed. And as we're going to see, birds don't eat the outside of the seed. Sometimes those vitamins and minerals will break down really quickly, and they'll break down when exposed to things like light. Yes, Laura, you're just showing off your cute dog looking out the window, aren't you?
no.
Why do they bother spending the money to fortify those seeds?
Profit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. These are seed holes right here. So this is almost 100% inedible.
Yeah, it's called the seed husks, right?
Husk or whole, yeah.
Okay.
So this is another problem a lot of new bird keepers experience. This looks like a lot of food, but it's not. So if people don't know about seed holes and seed husks and that they're inedible, they'll go, why is my bird not eating? I've got a full bowl of food in there. So yeah, most people don't know that this isn't edible. All seed diets, including those fortified diets, are deficient in specific nutrients anyway. Things like calcium, vitamin A. Vitamin A breaks down very quickly in supplements. And as I mentioned, seed diets are very, very high in fat. So what are the alternatives? Alternative one, pelleted or formulated diets. Now, these are designed to be the base of the bird's diet. I don't know about the fiber levels in seed. So these pelleted diets come in a lot of different sizes, shapes, colors. You can get pellets, you can get things that are called crumbles. It can take a lot of time to convert a bird that's been eating seed onto a pelleted diet. But pelleted diets in general are better. They are healthier than seed. You can also buy things, and I hate to talk about a specific brand, but Lafabers, Nutriberries is a diet that's made of seeds that is held together with molasses and a vitamin mix to act as a different alternative. So it's not pellets and it's not completely seed, but that's more balanced and more complete than straight seed. If you cannot get the bird to eat pellets, this is a good alternative. Preferably, you can use this for treats, a training aid, or when you're transitioning the bird to a pelleted diet. Pelleted diets can be species specific to a degree. So you'll often see things like large parrot. That would be the Amazons. You might see a different diet for macaws. We've already seen that not all macaws need the same diet. So this is not going to be the only thing you feed the bird. Regardless of whether you're on seeds or pellets. That's going to be what I call the base diet, and you need to add other foods. The other advantage to these formula diets is no seed holes. If we have no seed holes, we know how much the bird is eating. And it's less messy because those seed holes are very, very lightweight boy, they can get everywhere. And when birds are picking through your seed mix looking for the junk food, they will throw seeds everywhere. So this is significantly less messy. Oh, and no seed moths. Exactly. Although seed moths are a great source of protein for your pet bird. Or mice. Yeah, well, mice would probably try and get into your pelleted food just like they would seed. I feed the wild birds and I feed them seed. And that is in a metal trash can to keep the mice out. So far, it's worked. Okay, so pelleted foods might not be recognized by birds as food. So there are a few tricks that you can do to help switch birds to a new diet. The first thing is, if we're talking about parrots, the big parrots or the little parrots like budgies, or even the zebra finches who are flock birds, you can demonstrate eating the new diet. What do I mean by this? You reach in and you mess with it with your hands. You pick it up. You can offer it to your bird on your hand if he's used to eating things off of your hand. The best time to start this process is first thing in the morning. When your bird wakes up, it's going to be hungry. It's going to want breakfast. So this is a good time to try and demonstrate that this is food and that this is something they should pay attention to. And you got to be consistent. Do it every day. You cannot just put pellets in and assume the bird will eat it when it's hungry, because birds just don't understand it until they've learned that it's okay. Once the birds start showing interest in the pellets, then you can have a container of pellets and a separate container of their old food, their seeds, gradually decreasing the amount of seeds you offer as you're watching the bird eat more and more of the pellets. While you are doing this, it is very important to watch their droppings. Droppings of birds on a pellet diet tend to be paler and larger. On a seed diet, smaller and darker. If you see their droppings, turn green or black, that offer them seed again. Green or black can be a warning sign of starvation. So you want to give them something that they are eating. If they're not getting enough nutrition, just give them the seed diet. This process in this video is making bird bread. So bird bread is something that people make for their own birds. There are lots of recipes out there. And you can start off getting them used to eating bird bread and putting seeds in the bread. And they'll get used to pulling the seeds out. And they'll eat the bread. One of the ways you can make birdie bread is to use ground up pellets to do it. So they're getting the taste of the pellet. They're tearing it open to get at the seeds. And then you can kind of switch to the pellets, right? Give them the birdie bread, but also give them the pellets. The pellets are going to taste the same, so they're going to recognize the taste. pellets should be between 60 and 80% of the bird's diet. And you want to make sure it is high quality, not an off-brand. I don't like to recommend brands, but I got to say, when it comes to birds, Laugh-A-Birds makes good quality stuff.
What would you, can you give one that you would recommend we stay away from?
Can I recommend one to avoid?
Yeah, like, is there one that you would avoid personally, like, just to get an overall, like, idea, like, because, like, I think it's Laugh-A-Birds, Nutriberries.
Yeah, the only brand that I can say for sure to avoid, and I don't even know if they make pelleted diets, but Hart's brand food has long had a reputation for being made out of cheap, low quality ingredients.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so 60 to 80% of the diet should be pellets. What else should they get? Regardless of what your bird. Anna says Zupremes are high sugar and artificially colored. Yep, okay. Harrison's and Rowdy Bush. Oh, I remember hearing about Rowdy Bush. I've heard about that one as being a good food as well. Thanks, Anna. That helps. All right. So all birds, whether they're on a pelleted diet or a seed diet, should get fresh fruits and vegetables daily. And your bird will love you for this. So I can give you some general rules about what's good and what's bad. But this should make up between 25 to maybe 30% of the diet. And the exact mix, that's going to depend on your bird. So more fruits for birds that are fructivores, more vegetables for birds that are grainivores and that sort of stuff. So you'll want to kind of tweak your fruits and vegetables. Dark leafy greens, but not kale. Kale has oxalate in it, which can cause damage to kidneys, and it can hurt people if you eat way too much kale as well. Broccoli is very popular with birds. It's a good thing to feed them. Peas, lentils, herbs, red and yellow fruits and veggies. I see Laura said carrots. Carrots are good. These might be little tiny pieces of carrots. You may need to cut those or even grate them. So like use a cheese grater. Can peas work? Yeah, you can feed your bird peas. Absolutely. That's a good one. A lot of this stuff too, you can buy the frozen stuff. I wouldn't buy the canned vegetables, but you can buy frozen vegetables. They're generally as high, sometimes higher in nutrient than the fresh stuff, because the fresh stuff may have been sitting out for a while. So frozen is fine as long as you thaw it. Fruit seeds should be removed before feeding. So you can feed your bird apple slices, but apple seeds can contain, I think it's cyanide. So you don't want to give that to your birds.
That is correct. It is cyanide.
Okay, thank you. And of course, you want to wash everything first. As a rule, these should be raw. The size of the pieces depends on the size of your bird. So this is a nice little conure here. I'm not sure what these cubes are, but you can see he's able to consume those pretty well. I have given, literally like half or a quarter of an apple to a finch, taking the seeds out, and they'll eat it. So it's going to depend on how tough the material is and how big your bird is, what size you want to do. And again, birds can be picky eaters, so they may need you to demonstrate that this new stuff is food before they'll eat it. And they may decide that they like broccoli, but not carrots, or they may decide that they hate broccoli. Okay. I've got a comment about 1 inch thick they can grab and eat on their own. Some of that's going to definitely depend on the size of the bird. Ronit, you've got your hand up? Go ahead.
My cockatiels, the best way that I could get them to try new foods was to offer it to them. They'd look at me like I was handing them the end of the world, and I would eat it. And I could do that 2 or 3 times. And then they would be so jealous that they would like rip it out of my hands.
Yep, I was just gonna say, I just said something exactly like that.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. If you just demonstrate, that can really help.
Oh, and sometimes he even knew I was faking it. I was like, wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would, well, there would be no harm in eating bird pellets. I don't know how they taste.
They don't taste good.
Oh, someone knows.
I tried millet once. It wasn't as sweet as I thought my birds thought it was.
Man, birds love that stuff. They think it's great.
Well, we have something in common, Ronnie.
Okay, so once again, as you add different foods, you may see changes in the bird's droppings. Fruits and vegetables tend to have a high water content, so the droppings may be wetter than what you're used to seeing. When we talk about bird droppings, remember birds have a cloaca, so the droppings are going to include both urine and we're going to call it fecal matter because it's not really the same as what we get in people, but you're going to get a dark area and a light area and some wet, and that's fine. If you're concerned and you need to collect a sample for a vet, for example, put a sheet of waxed paper on the bottom of the cage. That makes it very easy to transport that sample to your vets to be looked at. Okay. And we are out of time once again. Anything you guys want to talk about or ask questions about before we leave? Could you use dog pads as flooring for his bird?
It's like he says he wanted to use this, he said the newspaper, but then I'm not sure about the ink on the newspaper. I don't want them like.
Newspaper is better than dog pads.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I was
So
like, dog pads may have like, if they're scented, they may have a chemical and you don't want your bird getting that. Or if they eat the dog pad, it could get stuck and it could really cause digestive issues. Then you're
That's
gonna
what-
be making an expensive arm and a leg trip to the vet and possibly
Yeah.
coming back with not a bird. So,
you can buy unprinted newspaper. So, so it's the paper that doesn't have ink on it,
yeah,
sometimes bought by artists for practice materials. So you can buy that. It's not very expensive. It's not going to be as expensive as dog pads. If he's worried about ink, that's an alternative.
okay.
Newsprint.
I just know that he said he had like a very, like he likes to let his birds fly around. Like he has a whole like kitchen like dedicated to his birds, multiple birds. So I was like, he needs something that's gonna like, he doesn't have to like, that's gonna cover it.
Yeah.
But like, I said, okay, so get a measurement, and then there's some, we saw one that's white, he got one with bird pattern, he didn't like it. But like, it has the line where you should cut it and like the measurements, but then he said, how frequently am I gonna have to change it? I said, I mean, that depends on how many birds you have and how messy
How
they
messy
are.
they are. Yeah. Yeah.
But don't do dog pads, you said.
No, don't do
Someone
that.
said you could do dog pads. I was like, I
No.
don't know where they got that from.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I mean, if it has birds, if it's made for birds, I mean, it would be made for birds, but if something's made for a dog, I wouldn't generally use it for a bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
okay, cool.
instinct there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right, well, glad I asked, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Bye to the few of you who are still on.